Well, Mick, we've made it to the other side of a huge weekend of racing. Oh my gosh, can you believe Antino? Two Group 1s to his name.
Yeah, he's quite the horse. He's quite the horse, and we'll get into that race and unpack it all. But I think the most crazy thing out of the weekend is just you and I were discussing how quiet the week was last week, and then a couple of days of racing unfolds, and I feel like there's more stories popping off now than there was in the autumn. So we've got jockeys overseas. We've got the VRC is starting to make a few moves. We've got Rosehill on the horizon. Antino's announced himself as one of the best, if not the best horse in Australia. What else? J-Mac, Voyage Bubble, Triple Crown. It's just all happening, and it's what I love about sport, but more particularly racing, is that it can change so quickly, and momentum's everything.
Yeah, most definitely. And just looking at the weekend just gone for us here at Racing X, we obviously had the Club 100 suite at the Gold Coast Turf Club. That was a huge night of racing. Our local trainer, Paul Shaler, trained a
Mm.
treble, biggest win of his career to date with Isti Star and the Magic Millions 2-year-old national. That was just a huge run. The team probably could have got four winners. Scud had to come up the outside, had such a tough run, ran second, but they're just so consistent at the moment. I'm really looking forward to their stable as we continue to progress. But obviously, our highlight for the weekend was the Doomben Cup, and I was just blown away by Antino. But it leaves so many questions around some other runners, particularly Pride of Jenny.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the racing community got a really good gauge of, I should say, a reliable gauge. There's always questions with any runner based on form, but we really now know how good Antino is with that win in the Doomben Cup. And just moments after the race, Tony Gollan said, and mind you, Tony Gollan's won 11 straight Brisbane training premierships, or has anyway, and he said that Antino's the best horse that he's ever trained.
Yeah, just that high galloping, like the way that he can, sustain such a
Mm.
high galloping speed. And you even look back to me, what's most remarkable about this win is how long this horse has been up. He actually hasn't had an extended break since pre spring, and he's obviously done Melbourne, Hong Kong, Sydney, back up to Brisbane to secure two Group 1s without a spell. Really goes to show what a training effort this is, and also the team and the bond that they've created with this horse to have him just absolutely cruising and peaking for such a long period of time. Truly hats off to them. But now, the biggest news to come out of that is that he is in contention for a Cox Plate and is $7 behind the short price favourite Via Sistina. Mick, how do you think he's going to stack up in a Cox Plate?
I think he stacks up perfectly. I think a horse like Antino suits Moonee Valley, and I think he suits the Cox Plate distance at Moonee Valley. The Cox Plate's very much a race that, not all, but a lot of the winners are horses that can really build into the race and have, a knack of being able to pull out and, be moving at speed around a tight bend and be able to sustain that gallop into the straight. And that's exactly what Antino does. In saying that too, the Cox Plate's not a race you necessarily need to be flush out of the gates, and Antino's usually a little bit slower away. So I think, you know, everything going to plan, and you can get a healthy Antino to the Cox Plate. I think the race is going to be won or lost down the side of that track, and I think that's where Antino can do his best work. So. We normally talk about the overreaction of markets and future races and horses coming into really short quotes, but I think Antino at that $7-8 quoting behind V16 is spot on. And I think, Antino might be second favourite or even favourite heading into the race later this year.
It's going to be more interesting to see how this race really stacks up. And I don't want to be an Antino knocker at this stage. I love this horse and the theatrics that has encompassed it, particularly for us Queenslanders. But looking at what he beat in this race, he
Mhm.
beat Kovalica and Faulkner Park, two horses that are probably more handicapper grades, if we want to say that, and then going to a Cox Plate, taking on the likes of Via Sistina, potentially Fangirl, and of course we get a lot of the world's best racehorses come over to contest this race. Where do where do we think he'll actually sit there? Like, I'm unsure yet if he's at that caliber to be completely competitive and have that market support.
Well, this horse has been, getting better and better and better, and that trajectory hasn't stopped. You can only beat what, is in the race, and Antino has absolutely walloped these horses twice in the Hollandale and now in the Doomben Cup. And you said it yourself, fella, that the horse has been up for such a long time. I'm hoping now Antino can get a little bit of, a rest and break and allow for, proper recovery and allow them to really, I'm sure Antino's not 100% right now. After being up for so long, I'm sure that they're dealing with a couple of little niggles or issues with this horse. And maybe that's why Tony Gollan said that this is, the best win that he's ever been a part of, because they've faced so many challenges. The horse has been up for so long. It's such an effort from this team. Who's to say that, after a little break and, real focus now on the Cox Plate, which Tony Gollan said himself, that this horse can't go to another level again and compete with the best in the world?
Now I have to ask you the hard question. Pride of Jenny, will we see her again?
I hope so. I think the fact that they've come back, it'd be too soon to say goodbye again to Pride of Jenny. I just think that people, the fans and even the team, who I'm not really someone to sit here and provide advice to Kieran Maher Racing. I'm in no position to do that, but I think just recognizing that this horse, we saw it the other two starts back. Went to an open class, rated race and carried a little bit of weight, and we knew she was going to go forward and try and hold on, and it was exciting. It was just as exciting as watching Pride of Jenny run on the weekend and get to the races in good nick. So I think just taking it back a little bit and just accepting the horse is no longer the Pride of Jenny that won Horse of the Year. She's probably not a horse that can run 2,000 meters anymore. Let's go back to the mile and let's focus on some races that have better competition for this horse. I don't want to see her go just yet.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I definitely think Mile is her goal, and if they keep her, we now need to acknowledge that everyone knows the Pride of Jenny tactic. Yeah, sure, all of us were there trackside on Saturday wondering if she was going to lead and by how far, but now the jockeys are smart enough to know to not let her get away with a margin like that. You put on a bit of pressure and she'll fold, similar to what we saw with Zaki a few years ago when he became to come undone. So I think, things need to be revised there in her camp should she stay. If they decide that enough is enough, she has done more than enough for this game and she's going to make an excellent mother. Now, onto our warning signs. Faulkner Park truly lived up to the hype. I think that he actually ran super behind Antino. The way that he was this last pair back earlier on in the race, and then to make that move following Antino into the race, to hit the line at that sustained gallop, that was a huge run.
I had my eyes on two horses in that race, and it was Antino and it was Faulkner Park. And from a long way out, I knew they were going to run 1-2. Kovalica did sneak up the inside a little bit, but you could tell from a mile out that these are the two class gallopers in the field of the Doomben Cup. And I think Faulkner Park's in a great position to go on and win next start and go back to back in the Q22. I thought it was a superb run, and I think Faulkner Park's going to be peaking next start.
Yeah, I think Kovalica will run really well in the Q22 also. Question mark if, can get that win. It's been, I think, 20 starts without a win now since the 2023 wow. Queensland Derby. So bit of a reputation now as Chris Waller's sacrificial lamb, but hats off to the team for staying persistent. But anyways, regardless, it was great to see, the Queenslanders, we're continuing this trend of dominating this carnival. It's creating so many headlines and such a buzz here with the locals. It's really great to see, and I hope this trajectory continues for the rest of the carnival. Now, Aussie Jockeys, what a weekend we've had. Now, Mick, I know you wanted to chat about Luke Cartwright. He had a huge day on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, there were brilliant jockey performances right across the world, from Aussie jockeys and Aussie jockeys that we probably wish we could claim, but we can't because they're Kiwis. But
we'll still claim James.
Yeah, they're part of our system. Mick D as well. But yeah, Luke Cartwright, the flying mullet. He was superb. He rode a hat trick. 3 winners in about 90 minutes. All for Moody and Coleman as well. And, the kid's just 18 years old. So, it was awesome to see. It's always awesome to see a young jock, make the most of these times years when a lot of the good jockeys are travelling the world, or they're up the East Coast, up north in Queensland, and they get that opportunity to get maybe 4 or 5 really good rides for one stable. The stables that they're usually putting in the hard yards out of track work. And I know Kath Coleman said, in an article that I read that Luke has been putting in the hard yards with this stable, and it's awesome to see them get a result. But it doesn't come out of nothing. He comes from a racing family. His brother Matt's doing great over in New Zealand. The Tolson Proctor combo down here in Victoria, his mum and his grandma. So racing's in his blood, and we spoke about these jockeys who are just performing right across the world, and I'm sure there are a bunch of jockeys that Luke Cartwright looks up to every single day.
Huge feat too. When you look back, I think he only had his first Metro win a month ago, I believe. So he's really on the onwards and upwards, and it's a real testament to those relationships that you build, like you were saying, as an apprentice, to have that relationship with Moods and Coleman, and to then obviously have such a quality book of rides and then produce the winners. He's only going to continue that positive association. And I want to touch
Absolutely.
on Damian Lane. What a day he had in Tokyo. 6 winners, 5 of the last races. I'm going to be all eyes on his ride in the Tokyo Derby next weekend.
Absolutely. He's for quite some time now been the go-to man for these top flight Japanese trainers. I'm sure that the Japanese public know who Frosty is now. They have for a long time, and he stamped himself once again over the weekend, and rode another 2 winners on Sunday. And Mick D's over there as well, riding alongside Damian Lane and doing fantastic things. But yeah, Frosty just seems to go to another level when he goes to Japan, and oh yeah, he must be making a fair bit of cash over there as well. You can imagine. But yeah, as I said, like Luke Cartwright, how good for a youngster like him to be able to perform on the weekend at the same time, be able to look right across the world and see that all these jockeys who have come through the same system as him here in Australia are doing it at the top flight. And you've got Perton, Abdallah, McDonald all doing it at Sha Tin too on Sunday. So it was a great weekend for Aussie jockeys and the system that we've been able to produce and put together here in Australia for quite some time now. And onwards and upwards for the flying mullet, Luke Cartwright.
Now, talking about onwards and upwards, there was a bit of news out of the VRC last week with the pub test on Thursday night. As a member of the VRC, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I thought that maybe, it was on Thursday night. I thought maybe Kylie Rogers and Neil Wilson might have been tuning into Racing X, and they heard that, we wanted to see a bit more of a member-centric focus from the VRC, and that's exactly what they did on Thursday night. I thought it was a great step forward for the club to be able to go, let's stop these, meetings of people who are right at the top, and let's go to the member, let's go to the pub, and let's invite members, and let's chat over a beer and over a meal face to face. Let's talk about the financial crisis, let's talk about prices of food and beverages, let's talk about entry fees, let's talk about membership benefits. And they did, and a lot of the members said it was fantastic, and they actually felt like they were being heard. So as a VRC member, it's huge news, and I'm hoping that this is, the first of many steps forward. To keep people like myself and all those people I've been going to the races with for over 15 years at the VRC to stick around and enjoy the biggest and best racing club in the world.
It's such a great positive step, and I truly think that Kylie Rogers has been the best thing that could happen to the VRC. Obviously, with her experience in the AFL and then coming over to racing, she understands the importance of that fan engagement and the members. And having the ability to take yourself out of the boardroom in these highly strung situations and come and meet with people on such a ground level, it's so important. It's going to be so crucial to the success. Unfortunately, Kylie has inherited a lot of issues with the VRC that everyone's looking at her to fix. And I don't envy the position she is in, but she is doing everything she can from a boardroom committee level down to the grassroots of the members, and, just being willing to go and hear everyone out and wanting to talk through these problems. It's a true testament to her as a leader. And I truly can't wait to see what comes of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think hats off to the members who actually went out to the pub as well. That's, it's one thing for the VRC, the chief executive and the chairman to go out there, but it's also another thing to members to say, I want to represent the membership community, go out there and ask the tough questions. And that's what happened. So hopefully this is that positive step forward that many have been waiting for. And hopefully the spring carnival that awaits us in 2025 is new and refreshing, and there's a lot of happy members turning up to headquarters.
I have no doubts that it will be. But now on to international news. Storm Boy.
Ugh.
That was my reaction too.
Yeah, big flop, big flop. It's a
Oh.
disaster. It's an absolute disaster. But you know, do we start looking forward? Do we just start looking towards the breeding barn and forget about the turf? You know, he came out primed. They had the prep map sorted. You know, the new home, the new trainer. A trainer who's absolutely flying at the moment as well. Ryan Moore, one of the best jockeys of all time, who knows the horse on board. You know, it's officially, you know, the racing, it's that tail, I should say, of racing folk kind of getting ahead of themselves. Whether it was the fans, whether it was the, you know, the breeding teams, whether it was the you know, all stakeholders involved in racing wanted Storm Boy to go and succeed at such a young age, and I think you know we all got ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. It's a long way to send your $20 million if you're
Mm.
Coolmore. The only excuse I'll give him was it was a straight run, no bend in the track. But even still, God, he was just hanging and he just looked like he wanted to go. And Ryan gave him a bit of rein. He just was off the bit, flattened, and did nothing. I don't even know what this will do for him as a breeding prospect now. Obviously, Justify is such a popular stallion both in the northern and southern hemisphere. But what races has he won, especially in the northern hemisphere, to justify what Coolmore would be looking for him as a stallion?
Nice pun there from you.
I know I didn't even mean it. As I said it, I was like, that might come across a bit confusing.
Yeah, look, I think you know once you spend that much money on a horse, you know, for its breeding prospects, I think you've got to just go and have a crack. And just pray for that those involved at the Justify and Pelican bloodlines do this whole story justice from a breeding perspective. And you know, there's always the chance that it will. Will it be worth the money they spent? There's a very small chance that that's the case. However, time will tell. Time will tell. But I just can imagine this weekend the UK racing pundits, you know, their kind of arrogant
Oh,
style. They'd just be absolutely laughing at racing here in Australia over the weekend, saying, "What the hell is going on down under? And how has Coolmore paid this amount of money for this horse who has just run last in, you know, I think Group Three company? It's not, you know." It's still, you know, Group Three company in Ireland's still fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but you know, Storm Boy, they paid how much, however many millions they paid for this horse, and he's really produced nothing.
particularly when you look at the way, us Australian racing fiends, we say we've got the best sprinters in the land, no one can beat us. And then to just send such a disappointing prospect who was such a strong and precocious 2 year old. We thought that he was all off to go and do big and great things up in the Northern Hemisphere. So, very disappointing result there.
Yeah, I guess you know you probably have a bit more information than someone like I would, but do you think you can look back and say maybe the pressure to perform at such a young age, and you know once those big mobs like Cormore start circling, and that breeding pressure, and you know they had to nail it in a few of those races. Do you think that that's been the toll, taken the toll on this horse, and that you know maybe if they were a little bit more patient and you know didn't have such you know big teams like Coolmore circling and offering up big amounts of money, that this horse could have gone on to do great things as a 3 and 4 year old?
Yeah, I definitely believe so, honestly. We see it time and time again. It's a bit of an unspoken thing, but we all call it like the 2 year old curse and the golden slipper curse, particularly. A lot of those golden slipper winners, they're a dime and a dozen to go on and win another Group 1 following because of the sheer amount of work that goes into getting such a precocious horse. And we have to look at it from two sides. There's the mental game of it and the physical game. Now, the mental game particularly takes its toll on the fillies, I've found in my experience. It's a lot of work to keep them up and performing so consistently when you're looking at a prize money scale of order of entry. So you obviously need so many runs to get enough prize money to be considered. So it's tough to keep them mentally sane when they're such an immature horse. And then the other side of it is obviously the physical. You're taking a yearling and from such a young age,
Yeah.
I'm sure the stud farms, they know which horses are going to be the most precocious. So they're on such a strong feed to try and get them to develop early. Then they go to the barn and it's a massive toll on their joints, on them physically, and even down to the smaller microbiology of it. These young horses, there are some of them where if you know they're going to be a 3-year-old type, you kind of just let them come into the barn. They'll get some viruses. Like, it's normal for young horses. It's the same as when you send a child to daycare. They all need the viruses, the sicknesses
Sniffles.
go through, and everyone's immune system's boosted. Whereas these young horses that we're trying to get to the races, they're on antibiotics, they're on, immune suppressors, anti-inflammatories. They're on so much to keep them sound and bubble wrapped and healthy. But it really does take a toll when you add those three things together of the mental toll, the physical toll when you look at, your joints, your legs, and then the virology, I don't know if that's the right word, but the immune toll. All of those three things, you're putting a horse under so much pressure. By the time that they're 3, they probably don't have a whole lot left. And, I don't look at them as any less of a horse for not, because they've achieved so much in such a short period of time. In a year's time, they learnt to have a saddle on their back and respond to the aids of a rider, and then they're winning Group 1s and are being sprouted as one of the world's best horses. It's a very short time for that quick of a turnaround. I don't think we can blame these horses for them being flops with what we put them through. Now, in Australia, I am a big fan of 2-year-old racing, I have to say. Magic Millions and the Golden Slip are 2 of my highlights on the calendar. But we do put a lot of pressure on our animals to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, from a background, my background, which is more of a fan background of racing, I've always just gone by the book that says a happy horse will race fast. Keep your horses happy, and maybe Stormboy just doesn't want to run. He's sick of it. He's maybe not happy being out there racing because of all that. So you never know. I guess it's written now, and he doesn't look to be the horse we all thought he was going to be. And let's just hope, as I said before, let's pray that he can get to the breeding barn and deliver some talent there. But that's all. That's on offer. Anymore. Even if he goes out and wins a big race, I still think it's done and dusted. The whole story and the prospect of Stormboy.
Yeah, he's definitely in the same book as Pride of Jenny at the moment, although nothing's confirmed. I think everyone's just waiting for that tweet to say it's all over Red Rover. But whilst we're on the international chat, how good was Voyage Bubble last night? Did you stay up to watch the run?
I did stay up, and I thought the first thing I thought when I watched that race was, if there was any way Voyage Bubble was going to win and win well, it was going to be if they just go crazy up front. And I think it was with 1,000 to go or 900 to go, they just went off up front, and J-Mac just sat pretty, and he just let the best horse in the race do its thing. And Triple Crown, they don't come around too often. I think 93, 94 was the last one in Hong Kong. So just amazing effort from the team. And Ruby Lot was the other horse I was keen to watch. And
that one's gone in my black book.
Yeah,
that
she
was
stuck up the
huge,
inside and looked awesome. I was stoked for David Hayes and Hugh Bowman, who he said last week, he stuck with the horse and believed that it could get every bit of that distance in that race.
I definitely, I'd love to be in Zach Purton's head on that ride on Ensued. Obviously, Dubai Honour and Voyage Bubble were the horses to beat. Now, when he made that mid-race move, like you said, where he came up the outside and sort of put that pace in, he took the horses on up front, and he kind of set Dubai Honour alight there, I think, which in turn created that perfect passage for Voyage Bubble. And James just must have been cheering watching all of that unfold. But I truly wonder what Zach thought there. Did he think that he would take them on and just get a nice sit? Or, he kind of thought that it would pan out the way that it did.
I'm not sure. I think maybe did Zach Purton think that Dubai was definitely the horse to beat, and that he needed to pressure Dubai up front.
He definitely made Dubai come undone, but still a big risk.
Absolutely. Yeah, they went crazy up front, and you could tell very early on that they were hitting a wall, and Voyage Bubble was home a long way out. And James McDonald would have been cheering a long way out in his head anyway. So, just in terms of the Triple Crown, I think we mentioned last week, does Voyage Bubble now, is Voyage Bubble the horse of the year?
I definitely think so. When he's proven that versatility, obviously up to the mile, to the 2400, that's 5 career Group 1s. He was Ricky Yu's first winner over the 2400 metres. This horse is pure quality, and Kai Ying Rising will certainly have his time in the sun, but like we said last week, who's he been racing up against?
Yeah.
He certainly doesn't have that air of quality and versatility that Voyage Bubble displayed.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think it gets more versatile right now than Voyage Bubble. To do to have those three wins in the space of 5 months is incredible. And what another feat for James McDonald to add to his resume as the best jockey in the world and on his path to being the best jockey ever.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm sure, especially after this season that he has had and the association that he's built with the Hong Kong racing community, they are going to be knocking his door down to get him over there. What would you do if you were in James's position? Obviously, he has that stranglehold over the Australian jockey scene, but he can go anywhere in the world and that respect is there for him. And I'm sure he's had so many offers on the table. Which rein would you pull? Australia, Hong Kong?
Uh, Personally, I'd be trying to do both for as long as I possibly can, but I will be absolutely shocked if James McDonald doesn't go and spend, have a permanent residence in Hong Kong soon enough. The money's just too good. The opportunities are just too good. It puts him in more of a central position on the globe where he can, travel more efficiently to different parts of the world in a short amount of time. It just provides so many different opportunities. And it's definitely something that a lot of the best jockeys ever have gone and ticked off and achieved. And I have no doubt that he's been thinking about Hong Kong for a very long time, and it's on the horizon.
Now, back home, another horse that James has had really close association with is Anamoe, and there has been so much buzz around the Magic Millions weanling sale and his first crop of yearlings. Who have been the big spenders?
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the best things about racing is that a lot of these very best thoroughbreds that we see on the track, continue their story at stud, and they can have progeny go to the racetrack themselves and represent what Anamoe stood for. And I think one that stood out recently to me is Ole Kirk, whose progeny's just been kicking so many goals out on the track. And, Miss Ole proved her ability at Sandown over the weekend once again. But very soon it's going to be Anamoe's turn. And I think he's going to shine as a stallion. From all reports, everything I've been reading and watching, the Anamoe features, the temperament, it's all been passed through to a lot of these weanlings, and they've been turning heads both in Sydney with Inglis and then just yesterday up in the Gold Coast with Magic Millions. And yeah, it looks like they've come up a treat.
Kieran Ma was particularly fond of them. I saw Will Bourne, the racing and bloodstock manager, he absolutely spruiked. Was it lot 160? Lot 60, sorry.
Lot
They bought
60.
it for $360,000, going to follow a similar path to Icarian Dream. She looks like a beautiful filly.
Absolutely. And the funny thing about Team Ma is I found this interesting. Maybe it's, something that these big teams have been doing for a while, but it's not something I've come across too often or remember. But she's going to be it's a filly, a Newgate filly out of Kiki Miss. It was lot 60, $360,000. She's going to be prepared with, in their time, I should say, with Ma, and then re-offered again at the Magic Millions, and by then, Team Ma are going to understand, the ability of this horse, what she's probably worth as a yearling going back through the ring. And, they might let her go. If there's a big price that comes up and they're happy to sell, then they'll sell. And then otherwise, they'll buy her again. And then they get to race in all those big Magic Millions races. So it's kind of a bit of a win-win, and it's almost something that these big stables who have that extra bit of money and that extra size and intelligence to their team around them, it's something that they can do and make the most of. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, it's been particularly popular. I noticed this season and last season, those end use purchases at weanling sales, we kind of haven't seen them so much outside of the pinhookers in my time anyhow. But I think people are really starting to understand. We come around to January and these horses are so expensive. They're obviously beautifully developed. They've had over a year's worth of preparation put into them, which certainly justifies a price tag. It's no short feat to get a horse to the yearling sales. But as a weanling, if you have the horsemanship and the team behind you and you can identify a beautiful looking type that's going to grow and furnish the way you want to, it's such a lucrative and more economic option than waiting a year's time for that yearling sale. And then if you have the ability to obviously put them back through the sale and the team that might be willing to spend a little bit more to retain them so that you can nominate them for the Magic Millions series. Such a great option.
I'll be very surprised if, the fact that Will Bourne and Kira Maher and their team have recognised this filly so far out from, getting to the racetrack. I'll be very surprised if this horse goes back through the ring and they don't purchase her again and take her off to the Gold Coast when those big races come around. Anything can happen. As I said, they get the choice. They get to put that, price tag on her. What is she worth? What will we bid up to when it comes to the Magic Millions again? And as I said, it's a win-win. They either get above what they valued her at once she's, being prepared, or they get the horse back and then they get to race her in those big Magic Millions races for ridiculous prize money for horses of their caliber. So, hats off to Team Mar. I think that's a fantastic kind of little thing they got going on there.
Yeah, I'm sure too. They're probably anticipating that Anamoe's only going to gain more support as a stallion. He served 149 mares, I believe, in just his first season. He's such a beautiful type. I remember watching him at the tracks just thinking there is no horse that is more handsome than Anamoe. 9-time Group 1 winner. He's, I think, going to be one of the next boom stallions, or I certainly hope he's going to be. That might be an early crow from me, so watch me get slammed in the comments for saying that. Well, we're filming on a Monday. Tomorrow is D-Day for Rosehill. We've all the postal votes, online votes are done, sealed and secured. Everyone votes in person tomorrow. The fate of one of the biggest decisions that we will see in our generation is going to be this week. How are you feeling about it all, Mick?
Well, I think since we last spoke about this, I was wondering whether, playing a bit of devil's advocate with myself, I've obviously sided with no. I think just as a racing fan and, understanding the value of an asset that is Rosehill to not, racing in Sydney, but racing in this country, that, no amount of money can take an asset like this away, and it be a good decision. But I have tried to see, have I been biased? Have I been receiving, a biased view through the media I'm reading, which is obviously, run by people and, you hear a lot from people who are involved in racing. And there's so many different interesting angles, but, nothing could sway me. I'm really hoping that there is a big no coming in the vote when it comes through. And, I'll be very shocked if this gigantic and valuable, you can't put a price on something like Rosehill, and I really hope that we're racing at Rosehill for a very long time.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and I'm so concerned about the numbers that they are projecting for voters. I truly hope that everyone that is a member of the ATC understands just how valuable and crucial this is and uses their voice so it doesn't go to proxy. It is so important that this vote is genuine and not skewed by people sitting on the fence or being unsure. There has been months build up and we got what we wanted. We asked the ATC for the full proposal of what this will look like. They gave us the 7 points, obviously guaranteed sale for $5 billion. We're still yet to see the terms of what that might look like, but they've promised a rebuild of Warwick Farm, a new training site potentially. The ATC are going to include $1.9 billion of that money from the sale of Rosehill to the redevelopment of the infrastructure, a loyalty program to be established, and a racing advisory board that will be set up. It just still doesn't seem like enough. As someone who's worked down there, I understand more than anyone that Warwick Farm needs a really good facelift. It's great track. I can't knock that, but the rest of the facilities, the housing, the stabling, is more independently owned down there, I believe. But it needs a full revival there. And then Randwick has the history. You can't knock Randwick. But Rosehill was a state-of-the-art, purpose-built training and racing facility. I don't think you can replace that. Of course, you can rebuild something, but this was just completed 10 years ago, I believe. You can't... This is just me looking at the racing jurisdiction and being like, you wasted all of that money to then go on and sell it. How can I trust you with this money and the promises that you've given us once again? It's really, really alarming.
Yeah, and I think a lot of you spoke about the people who are sitting on the fence and the chat about whether the people involved in this deal, people from Racing New South Wales are going to get a financial kick out of it themselves, and they've come out and said that there's going to be no financial kick for people involved in this deal or individuals, I should say. But I'm wondering if that kind of that news itself can be a contributing factor to swinging some votes in favour of yes. So time's going to tell. As you said, I agree with you in saying that it's going to be one of the major decisions and headlines or stories, no matter what happens, of our generation in racing. And yeah, I'm a massive no operator.
Yeah, I am too. Obviously, we need to future proof our industry, but I think there is just so many more options than selling one of the nicest training and racing facilities that we do have in the country. Now, that's enough of that rant. Looking ahead, this weekend we have 2 Group 1s at Eagle Farm. We have the Derby, the Kingsford Smith for our sprinters. Anyone in particular on the outside that you might have your eye on this weekend?
For both races, the Derby and the Kingsford Smith.
Either or.
I think the Kingsford Smith. Look, again, I'm always one who likes to wait and to see barriers and final fields. But will Giga Kick be running in the Kingsford Smith, you'd say?
I've heard no news on that. Last we
Okay.
heard, obviously, after the Goodwood was that it was still all eyes on this, but there's been no official news. It's been quite quiet in the Clayton Douglas camp.
Yeah, I think. Look, if Giga Kick does get a starter, I think it'll be hard to go past Giga Kick. I do think that run in Adelaide was still awesome. Obviously got too far back, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Barriers in those races are so important. They win those races, barriers. So the Derby, I was really taken by the win of Politely Done down in Melbourne recently. I'm not sure, again, once if it's guaranteed to be running up in Queensland. But yeah, if I'm going to be a little bit biased and get around the Victorians, I think Politely Done's one I'll be looking at in the Derby. But yeah, plenty on the line, and these both of these races, really set up some future races too.
Absolutely. I'm looking at, in the Derby at least, I'm all over the Rough Habit form line. I think Imperialist was super in that race.
Mhm.
But the runner-up, Deep Focus for Paul Shaler, that was a huge run. I don't even think the team were expecting for him to run as well as he did in the Rough Habit. Now, I believe he's got the blinkers on. Everything is full steam ahead towards the Derby. I think he's going to be a really valuable each-way play in this race. So I've got my eye on him as well as Bo Dazzler for the locals. We've just been dominating this carnival, so I can't leave them out here. Maddie Sears truly believes that Bo Dazzler steps up to this class, so I'll have my eye on him as well. And then in the Kingsford Smith, we've got Basusto. If we want to say that Annabelle and Rob are Queensland locals, which, they've had the barn up here for 3 years now, I think we probably can.
Claim
And
them.
then Elmore Zillow, huge step up in
Yep.
grade for Kelly Schweeder, but I think this horse might be ready to get a true grasp of its competition. I think we really need to see where this horse lays. Now, is he going to be a Group 1 sprinter? Maybe not, but we might get a true feel for where he actually belongs in the Australian racing scene.
Yeah, absolutely. And every horse you just mentioned then it's going to be so critical about where they draw, especially a horse like Elmore Zillow, who's probably not bringing the class. But, if Elmore Zillow hits the front, with 250 metres to go, we know how tough Elmore Zillow is out in front. And, those Queensland tracks, as you said, they can give a bit of a bias to these local runners. They know what to expect below their foot. So,
Particularly Eagle Farm. It's a tough track. The straight, feels never
yeah.
ending, and it's just such a niche surface to be able to run on and run really well, particularly when we haven't had rain, which we didn't last week. I don't think that we are looking to have any this week, so it could be quite, a firm underlying surface is what we tend to see at Eagle Farm.
There you go. Does Jolie Star get up for the Kingsford Smith?
Questions around that, actually. She was supposed to trial last week, and obviously that all got rained out. She's not in the trials today on Monday, nothing in on Tuesday at the moment, so whether she might potentially, I think it's Randwick trials on Friday. So question if they trial her down in Sydney and then come up for a Stradbroke, or do they bring her up here, run her in a Kingsford Smith, and then do obviously the 2 weeks into the Stradbroke. But I think it was 3 weeks since her last trial, so she'll be needing to do something leading into the Stradbroke for sure.
Still a pretty good field for that race. I think, whether
Oh
Jolie
yeah.
stars there or not, I think, we'll get a pretty good feel of what the Stradbroke's going to look like straight after that race.
Yeah, most definitely. There are just so many contenders. Even the possibility of our old mate Lims Kosciuszko. He's in
Oh, Limbs.
the early noms for the Kingsford Smith, so we'll see where he ends up. And I'm sure by the time we chat on Thursday, we'll have plenty of news and be able to get all into the nitty gritty.
Absolutely. There's going to be so much to talk about Thursday, and more Group One racing. As we said, there's going to be a big decision, or we'll get more news about Rosehill and onwards and upwards in the world of sport. This is I feel so lucky I get to do this. I just get to sit here and talk sport. So looking forward to do it all again on Thursday.
It's a true privilege, Mick. I'll see you on Thursday.
Catch you then.